This is Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
It's hour number 3 of Cashing Out right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. We've got ourselves a tremendous hour coming up as we've got the title game set. When I came onto the show to start out with, we had ourselves a game between Duke versus Houston where I was wondering if Houston was going to be able to get within 10 points. And you know what? They got a little bit more than that. They were able to win the game outright. A little bit of a different breakdown than I thought I was going to be giving a few hours ago. So we'll be diving in on that. The Crown title is going to be decided on Sunday as well. I know that the good people over here at Circa have done such a good job of being able to roll out the carpets. As with the Crown Invitational, I wish we would get a few more mid-majors in there. I feel like there's some improvements to be made. One thing that doesn't need to be improved, though, the way that Derek Stevens, Mike Palm, all these guys have rolled out the red carpet, it has been absolutely tremendous. The way that they have treated all these teams that have come over here. So an A-plus job to all the folks over here. So we'll be breaking down that game as well. So we've got some fun there, and we've got ourselves some baseball sweats that we need to take a look at for Sunday as well, because the only bad thing about the title game is that we need to wait about 48 or so hours until that is going to be going down. A little bit less than that now, but I mean, the way that we got here, you saw Auburn in the second half not necessarily get the job done against Florida. As I thought that, I'm sure that I'm not the only person that feels this way. If you look back at the Final Four and what we saw in terms of two games, I thought that my underticket in Florida versus Auburn after about 5.5 or so minutes, I'm thinking, well, this is not looking good. The live total has gone up like 10 points. It looks like these teams are just going to run and gun, and then the Florida defense just stuck Auburn in the mud in the second half in that game. Auburn may fall by a count of 79-73, so Florida's able to get the job done. They get the cover, they get the under for you, and the performance that we saw out of Walter Clayton, 11 of 18 from the floor, 5 of 8 from 3, perfect at the free throw line, really does loom very, very large now for Florida. They were able to get up and down. They did have 16 turnovers in that game compared to Auburn's 14, but certainly a great effort out there. And then what we saw in the nightcap, like the appetizer was very, very good. Like if you're going out to like some sort of a steak place or something like that, like I personally am a Texas Roadhouse guy personally, that's like the really good fried pickle that you get, but then you got the steak, and boy did the steak deliver. It's exactly at your perfect liking. It's just the absolute first bite is perfection, and then all throughout it just keeps getting better and better and better. That was this Houston versus Duke game, 70-67, a masterclass, in my opinion, the greatest Final Four game, non-title game I've ever seen. I still default a little bit to that Kansas versus Memphis game that we saw many, many years ago where Memphis breaks all those free throws, Mario Chalmers hits a 3, game goes to overtime, and Kansas wins the national title game. As a matter of fact, in the exact same building in which everything went down tonight. But for Duke, I do think that we need to call this a little bit of a choke from them. I'm not going to call it a full-on choke because typically when you do have a team that chokes down the stretch, and Duke did. Like, I keep trying to say that Duke didn't. Like, I want to be able to live in a world where Duke didn't choke this game away, but I mean, they were up 6 points with under a minute remaining. They had a turnover on the out-of-bounds play, and I thought that this was going to loom very large as well. And if you took a total of 137, if you got in on this a little bit earlier, you might have gotten a push rather than a win in terms of that total. That Joseph Tugler, him stealing away from the inbounder with a few minutes remaining, drawing that technical foul, that was one where you sort of slapped your head and you thought, man, that might be the difference in the spread. Turns out, no, it wasn't. Duke, they hit a few free throws with 1:14 remaining, and then they get outscored 9-0 in the final minute of the game. Houston just, that was some of the most masterful coaching I've ever seen. Now, Duke, they did not execute down the stretch. You had Tyrese Proctor with a 1-and-1. Bricks it. You have that out-of-bounds play. They do not execute. They have the ball stolen away, and for Houston, I believe that they had shot a 3 after they had that out-of-bounds play. They missed the 3, and then it was a putback dunk, if my memory serves me correctly. And if you're Duke, that just can't happen. Like the way that they executed down the stretch, and this is something that I actually came back to, and I'll pat myself on the back for this one as well. The one thing that had me concerned about Duke going into this game, and this is one thing that not just myself had said, other people had said, if you get into a tight game, these are grown stinking men on the side of Houston, and for Duke, these are a bunch of freshmen, these are a bunch of sophomores that when they were going through the ACC, they never found themselves in those situations. They never had to be in a spot where, oh, we've got only a 2-point lead. We have to somehow, some way be able to grasp for dear life in this one and just make sure that we don't choke the game away. It doesn't matter if we win by 1 point or we win by 100 million billion points. We just need to find a way to be able to win this game. Houston had been in those battles. Houston had challenged themselves all throughout the season. They had been in nip and tuck spots, and that showed through in this game. And I feel like that was just so paramount, just that experience factor. And it's not something that typically goes too much into like your spreadsheets and everything like that, but sometimes in a game like this, it turns out to be the difference, and boy, was it the difference here. Now we do have ourselves this title game between Houston and Florida, and it's been mostly Florida being a 1-point favorite. Briefly at DraftKings, Houston did become the 1-point favorite. That happened about an hour and a half or so ago, and that has now flipped to Houston once again being a 1-point underdog. This number is across the board, and total is pretty much a smattering 50-50 of 142 to a 141.5, which they're right on line with myself, and I made sure, so that way I put it on wax, and I made sure that it was out there before anyone was able to say, oh, you're just copying lines and everything like that. Before the game even started between Houston and Duke, I did put out there my projected handicap for this game. I put Florida as a 2-point favorite, made my total of 142, so right now, with the 141.5, we'll be looking at the over. I'm still going to let that line mature a little bit more. And personally, I'm going to be in on Florida on this spot. I do want to see how things trickle in a little bit, because I do have a thought in the back of my head that, again, I have mentioned this on the show a few times, and I'll mention it once again. What you see last in terms of just anything in life, that could be anything with regards to like just the people that you are chumming around with in terms of your friends. Your thoughts on them is very much based on what you saw last. What you had with regards to your favorite restaurant, where you went there last, that's still the lasting memory for you. What you saw last with your favorite sports team, it very much is there as well. What we saw last is Houston pull off one of the greatest comebacks in the history of all of college basketball, and I think that there's going to be a lot of people that bet on that, but I do think that Florida, out of all teams in college basketball, match up better with Houston than anyone else, because they do have big men down low. Alex Condon, by the way, in that Final Four game against Auburn, he had 1 point. Like, Alex Condon is not going to go off for only 1 point once again. I think that this team does a very good job of being able to match up with Joseph Tugler, Juwan Roberts, and we do have to give Roberts his love as well, because for Houston, something that might be going a little bit under the radar, might be going a little bit forgotten about as well. Roberts, with his team down 1 point with a few seconds remaining, he stepped to the free throw line with a 1-and-1 free throw opportunity, and he was, for the season, a 62.2% free throw shooter. Like, when I do a lot of my handicaps, for those of you guys that know my handicapping style, you know that I am very much a stand for, you don't want to put yourself in a spot where you're relying upon a 62% free throw shooter to knock down 2 free throws, and he did so. So, I mean, good on Juwan Roberts. He deserves some credit there, but certainly I do think that it's very interesting to see what we're going to be getting in this title game. I still stick with Florida. I still do think that with having Walter Clayton being the best shooter out there on the floor, that is very much going to matter in this circumstance. I do think that with Florida, they're going to probably turn the ball over a little bit more. They don't generate quite the same amount of turnovers as Houston does as well. Houston, they're going to be able to win the turnover battle, but I think that Florida is going to be able to win from within. Ruben Chinyelu has been very rock solid down low, so I absolutely love what he's able to bring to the table, and I do think that this is a spot where we do see Florida be able to get the job done. We'll get you a little bit more on that in a second, but we do have to give you guys some sharp plays, because over at the Sharp Plays, they have been doing a tremendous job ever since 2011 building trusted relationships with major sports books and sports insiders worldwide. They provide daily updates on what the professional sports bettors and betting groups are wagering on, so you're always ahead of the game. You're able to get some free information as well over on their Twitter/X feed, along with their daily emails in terms of action reports, alerts, and so much more. Plus, you're able to explore all their records, including online logs, right on their website, sharpplays.com. That is sharpplays.com, where you're joining a team that's never had a losing season, so you have absolutely nothing to lose over at sharpplays.com, as it is cashing out with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. But yeah, in terms of this game between Florida and Houston, again, I do think that we are going to be seeing a little bit of movement in terms of what we get overnight. I do think that if I had to anticipate the line movement, we're probably going to see it a little bit more in favor of Houston, and I have a little bit of a concern with this as well. What are we going to be seeing from Houston 2 nights from now? Is there perhaps going to be a little bit of a crash after that massive comeback? I have a little bit less, shall we say, worry about that than I would with a normal team, because I keep going back to it with Houston. This is a very old and experienced team. As a matter of fact, both of these teams are very old and experienced. By far, the youngest team that was able to make the Final Four was Duke, and I feel like that youth is honestly what served them wrong in this game. And that's something that you do want to be taking a look at. Now for Florida, you've got someone like a Walter Clayton that began his career over at Iona. He's been feasting for this sort of a moment. Milos Uzan, he comes on over from Oklahoma. He steps into that Jamal Shed role over at Houston, and he's been even better. And as I do talk about Alex Condon and the fact that he gave his team a big giant nothing burger, I do have to mention this as well. For Houston, if you are looking at an X factor in this game, I would say that it's Milos Uzan. He had to be off the floor throughout much of the second half because he had picked up 4 fouls. He only had 7 points in this game, and prior to this game, the Houston Cougars going into the Final Four, they were 20-1 in their last 21 games. In that span, Milos Uzan averaging 14 points per game, giving out 4 assists, so 1.6 turnovers per game, while shooting 50.6% from three-point range. So he has been very paramount for this team. I also do think that with regards to the overall shooting performances, I mentioned the fact that Walter Clayton, probably the best shooter in this game. LJ Cryer is making himself a very nice case for that as well. How about going 6 of 9 from three-point range here tonight? I don't know if he's going to be able to duplicate that. And again, I don't know if Walter Clayton is going to be able to duplicate the 34 points that we saw here on this Saturday. That said, with Walter Clayton, became the first player since Larry Bird to put up 30-plus points in both an Elite Eight and a Final Four game in the same NCAA tournament. Gonna have more thoughts here, and we do have to try to award a crown as well, because the crown final between Nebraska and Central Florida is going to be going down. We'll take a look at both of these title games coming up next right here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Cashing Out here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is Cashing Out right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. What a just absolutely tremendous night of sports this has been in general. Baseball actually went relatively well for myself as well, because I was doing the math. I was like, how did my write-ups do? Because I got so lost in everything that happened. 7-4 on this Saturday. So we'll certainly take that, but something that we've got to do is we've got to take a look at this title game right now. And I've been fleshing through everything with regards to the side and total with regards to this game. And I do think that there are going to be some very interesting aspects of this game. We shall see if we're going to be able to get any player props up, because as of right now, not seeing a ton of them. DraftKings, they do have a few of them because they have up there Walter Clayton to be able to get 10 plus points in the first half. Not sure if I would necessarily be wanting to mess around too much with those. Right now you've got mainly all of those. I'm not seeing too much with regards to like the overall points for the entirety of the game. I'm right now seeing a lot of those like special first half and everything like that. So we're going to try to get you guys a little bit more on that when we do get those available. But that said, this is going to be just a big time game, and this is exactly what you want if you're a college basketball fan. You want the best teams duking it out. It's very simple. You want upsets early. You want the blue bloods late. I mean, maybe you don't consider Houston to be necessarily a blue blood because Phi Sigma Jammin never was able to win a title, and now they have a chance to be able to avenge that in their home state. And for Florida, this is a school that, if you think blue blood in terms of college basketball, typically you're not going to be putting Florida with that regard. But prior to UConn, they were the last team to be able to go back-to-back back in the Billy Donovan days. Joakim Noah, we all remember those guys, and that was always some good, clean family fun. Corey Brewer as well. I have to bring up Brewer because I actually used to do play-by-play broadcasting prior to myself getting to VSiN over in his home state of Tennessee. It was old Portland, Tennessee. So I do have a little bit of affinity on that regard, but that said, right now, we are seeing this line staying relatively stagnant right now, with Florida being that 1-point favorite, total between 141.5, 142, and I do think that it's going to be so big to see what we do get in terms of some of these ancillary pieces. And I do think that with Florida, even though they did tighten up the bench a little bit more in terms of the Final Four game that we saw against Auburn, I think that they've just got a little bit more of a propensity to where if they need to pull someone off the bench, if they do need a little bit of an unexpected spark, they're able to get that a little bit more than Houston. For Houston, they were able to get a little bit of production off the bench from Javier Francis, who was able to give you 4 points, but still, I do have a few question marks with regards to this Houston team. Now, when you get into a title game like this, it's not like you need to be going like 12 men deep or anything like that. You're emptying the gas tank, you're giving it everything humanly possible that you do have, and there's going to be no tomorrow, but I do think that this is a sort of circumstance where, with regards to the total, it is very telling as to how this game is going to be going, because if you like the over, you're probably leaning a little bit more to Florida. Now, I know that Tim Murray was mentioning this about 24 to 48 hours ago on the network, and very astute analysis by this. With Houston, this is a different team that we've seen in past years, and I know that he was very much changed by the way that they were playing against Gonzaga. That was a game that, if you recall, Houston versus Gonzaga, and Houston shouldn't have had to play Gonzaga in the second round of the NCAA tournament if you look at the metrics, but that was a game where both teams were able to get to north of 75 points. Houston needed 80 points to be able to win that game, and this slow and controlled team in Houston, they have been able to get to at least 69 points in all but one of their games here in the NCAA tournament. The lone game that they didn't was that slog against Purdue, and we recall that slog against Purdue, that was in Lucas Oil Stadium, where that might be the worst sight lines humanly possible for shooters, and Houston is a top 5 team in the country in terms of three-point shooting percentage. Entering into the night, they were number 2 behind, I believe it was Villanova, who was number 1. Either that or Villanova might have fallen to number 4, but they were the number 2 in the team in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, and actually didn't hurt that at all. They might now be number 1 after going 10 of 22 here tonight, but I do think that with Florida, just having those guys that you're able to look to a little bit more off the bench, being able to bring in a guy like a Micah Handlogden, who you didn't have towards the beginning part of the season. Not necessarily too much of an offensive threat, but as a guy that is able to do a nice job being able to clog things up down low. You've been able to have Thomas Howe be a really good sixth man for this team. Guy with size, guy that's able to pop it and lock it from three-point range. I absolutely love what he's able to bring to the table, and I think pretty sure that you've had a few healthy scratches for this team as well, like Urban Klavzar. Even if you need to go to him, that's a guy that was a very highly thought of player coming over from overseas as well. So this is a team that is incredibly deep. This is a team that I think just has 2 of everything, and I think that they match up very well with Houston in this circumstance. So I'm going to be willing to roll with Florida in this spot. I did set them as my 2-point favorite. Like I said, set my total at a 142, so right now at a 141.5, which we're seeing at quite a few books. We'll be willing to take it over. Personally, I'm waiting to see how this line materializes just a little bit more, because I do personally think that there's going to be a little bit of money that rolls in on Houston after what we saw here tonight. I think that there's going to be some people that are going to see what we saw last. They're going to think, you know what, I need to bet Houston. I think that they're going to win the title, and I do have a little bit of fear that this is a game out there in the state of Texas. So that has all been processed by myself, but prior to the NCAA tournament, I thought that we were going to get a Florida versus Houston national title game. I thought that the final score was going to be Florida 72, Houston 70. I'm sticking with it. So that's what we're going to be going with there, and we are going to have ourselves a tremendous title matchup, and we're covering it all right here for you on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And if you're looking to become a VSiN Pro subscriber, you're able to do so for as low as $59 all the way through August 1st. That gives you access to everything that we do here at the network. That gives you our daily best bet emails. That gives you our betting splits from both DraftKings along with Circa. You get such great betting systems for all these sports. We're going to get you through the national title game, but then once that is done, we've got the start of the baseball season. The NBA and NHL playoffs are going to be here before you know it as well. So we've got you guys covered on so many different fronts. The Masters is coming up very soon as well. A tradition unlike any other. You get all of it for just $59 all the way through August 1st over at VSiN.com/subscribe. That is VSIN.com/subscribe, as it is cashing out with myself, Greg Eves Peterson, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And now we have to take a look at a game that I'm sure that many of you did not know was going down tomorrow. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm sure that there are many people that forgot that the Crown title game is going to be on Sunday. But as I always like to say, money is money. And I will say this as well before I go any further. The national title game between Florida and Houston is going to be tremendous. It's going to be the last game of the college basketball season. Just because it's the last game of the college basketball season does not mean it's the last night for you being able to make money on your bankroll. You've got plenty of other opportunities, if I could say that correctly, with regards to baseball, NBA, NHL. Just because this is the last game doesn't mean that you have to go and push all your chips in the middle or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I would say the bigger the game, probably the lesser your bet size should be. Now, if you see a nice edge on this game, obviously continue to bet it as you normally would, but Just because it's a big game doesn't mean that your standard 1-unit bet should be becoming a 5-unit bet, a 10-unit bet, or anything like that. Make sure to keep things in line. Make sure to keep things under control. Football season is going to be here before we know it. Heck, NFL draft is up in the next few weeks as well. Save some of those shekels. Be sure to be able to get in on the NFL value while you still have it. So there's that aspect of things. And if you're able to find some value here, absolutely bet it as well with regards to Central Florida and Nebraska for the Old Crown Invitational title game, as right now Nebraska does find themselves as a 3.5-point favorite. The total on this game is between 158 to 158.5, and I did turn in my write-up. I was a little bit late in turning this one in because I was lost in the Final Four hoopla, but that said, I am going to be willing to take a shot on the under, so my total at 158.5. Do have a Nebraska team that plays that out brisk pace, right around about 100th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. The lone thing that could really undo this total, in my opinion, is the fact that Central Florida just guns it. They are number one in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but for Central Florida, do have to have my, shall we say, question marks with this team going into the title game, because they played a game where they and Villanova combined to score north of 200 points in a game that went to overtime here less than 24 hours ago. Central Florida did play the game more recently. This is a back-to-back spot for them. They're going to be playing with really less than 24 hours worth of rest, so that's something that does impact me a little bit more. And Nebraska was playing against a little bit more of a slow and controlled team in Boise State as well. So I do think that Nebraska going to be a little bit more fresh. Additionally, Keyshawn Hall was the top scorer for Central Florida this season. He was also, I believe, their top rebounder with 7 rebounds per game. He did not partake in the Crown event. He entered in the transfer portal. If I'm not mistaken, I think that he went to Auburn already. So you've got a lot of these guys that are committing in the transfer portal as well. For those of you guys that listen to my college basketball podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, that will not be stopping after these college basketball games. It goes on all throughout the offseason. You get previews of all 31 of these conferences. I'll be taking a look at the transfer portal, seeing who's all going where, what coach is going to be able to excel in year number one, and what team is a schmuck for signing, a radio show host as their coach. I'm looking at you, UW Green Bay. Not a good move, but that said, we've got you guys all covered there, and we're going to have ourselves a lot of fun on that front. But for Nebraska, most of their guys did partake in this one. Out of all the teams that took in the Crown, I did feel like the two teams that played today here in Nebraska and Boise State, they were the ones that, for lack of a better term, we're taking it the most seriously with Nebraska. We got a guy in Bryce Williams who's able to give you 20 points per contest. Juwan Gary was absolutely on fire today. He went 4 of 4 from 3. Nebraska as a whole went 12 of 19 from 3. You have to think that there's a little bit of three-point shooting regression coming in for them, and if there's not, you just tip your hat and you move on. But I do think that with Nebraska, they're going to be able to do a solid job on the glass against a Central Florida team that is allowing opponents to grab 32.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That's outside the top 335 nationally, and not having their top rebounder out there. You do still have Mustafa Thiam, who's a 7'2" big man that's able to give you multiple blocks per contest. That helps out a little bit, but do think that Nebraska finds a way to get the job done. I'll be willing to lay up to the 3.5 that I'm seeing right now with Nebraska, and I'm in on the under. And coming up next, let's take a look at some Sunday baseball right here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back to Cashing Out here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We're back here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. It has been such a wild night of sports here on Saturday, and lost in it all, we had ourselves a really nice day of Major League Baseball as well. You finally saw the Cincinnati Reds be able to score a few runs, so yay, verily there. We got some nice run scoring in general in the league. The Angels were able to wrap things up, being able to get the job done against the Cleveland Guardians by kind of 10-4, so we had a lot of good action out there, and you did have a postponement between the Red Sox and the St. Louis Cardinals. So do note that if you're going to be looking to bet the game on Sunday between the Cardinals and the Red Sox, make sure that you're betting the correct one, because that is now a twin bill. It looks like it's probably going to be Miles Mikolas going up against old Richard Fitz in the second game, and then game number 1, it's lining up to be old Andre 3000 Palante going against Sean Newcomb. And I did do a write-up with regards to game number 2 of that series, and I did make sure to specify game number 2 and listed the start time there to be able to help you guys out. But that said, we've got ourselves some nice baseball here, and we'll get you guys some nice baseball picks here in this segment and the final segment. We'll go back through the national title game, give you guys everything that I'm betting here, in this case for the next 48 hours, because the national title game is going to be on Monday. And like I said, I'm still waiting for some of these player props to be able to materialize, come out in terms of national title game. A lot of books have not listed a ton on that front, and if I'm able to get a little bit more on that, I'll be relaying that to you a little bit more, because right now I'm seeing it's like Walter Clayton to be able to score 10 plus points. You have to lay like minus $1 billion on it, and there's just not a lot of value to be had there. But that said, what we do have some value on is this baseball slate for this Sunday, and I do think that we've got ourselves some relatively solid games, and we had a few games that were off the board. Like right now, we're just starting to see the Arizona Diamondbacks and Washington Nationals game come onto the board. It was unclear as to whether or not Trevor Williams was going to be able to get the start for Washington. He is indeed going to be doing so, and this is always a total that is slow to come onto the board, but we're starting to see it in terms of the Cubs versus Padres, because with Wrigley Field, the wind always dictates things there, but we're starting to see some 7.5s come up. So how about if we hit this game, 9:09, 9:10 on the card. It is old Ben Brown and the Chicago Cubs playing us to the San Diego Padres, and for the Padres, it is going to be Mr. Hart that is going to be going for them, not Kevin Hart, Kyle Hart, who goes for the Padres. And right now with the Pods, you're going to be getting them right around about plus 114, plus 121, minus 130 to minus 135 is that number on Chicago. And a lot of places still have this off the board, but the books that do have a total right now are setting it at a 7.5, shaded down to the under. And personally, I would be willing to take a shot on the 7.5 under. We'll see how this materializes in the AM. I was in a circumstance where at a 7 or less, I'd be in on the over, 7.5 or higher, I'd be in on the under. But I do think that there's some pretty good, solid value here with the Padres. I was willing to take a plus 108 or higher on their money line. Kyle Hart actually went on over to the KBO, and he absolutely tore it up last season. And we have seen a lot of these guys have a career renaissance when they gone over to the KBO. Merrill Kelly was one of those guys. We recall last year, old Eric Fetty Wap, a guy that I absolutely love for the St. Louis Cardinals. He came back from the KBO. He was rock solid. And Kyle Hart, he was able to put up a 13-3 record, sub-3 ERA, was able to really work on his swing and miss stuff after he got a cup of coffee at the big league level during the 2020 COVID season. And it didn't necessarily go his way. He clearly was not set to be able to be a big league pitcher. Now he is. And for Ben Brown, he's been able to do a relatively solid job of keeping the ball in the yard throughout his career. I just have a little bit of a question mark as to what sort of length you're going to be able to get out of him. You may recall in the Tokyo series that they played a few weeks ago against the Dodgers out there in Japan, he was actually coming out of the bullpen for them. They needed to elevate him to being a starter, so that's been a little bit neither here nor there. And for the San Diego Padres team, even though the wind is going to be blowing in a little bit in this one, it's sort of a situation in terms of Wrigley where I actually make sure that I've got the weather all gassed up and ready to go for this one, all the weather apps and everything like that. The wind is going to be blowing in to start the day, and then as the day progresses, you get a little bit less wind, it's going to be blowing out, but you also do have like mid-40s temperatures out there, so not necessarily the world's greatest hitting conditions, but even with those less than savory hitting conditions, you still have Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr., who they might be able to hit the ball in frozen temperatures because those guys are that good. You've had Jackson Merrill do a tremendous job of being able to move the line for this team, and for Kyle Hart, I do think that he's going to do a nice job and be able to pass it to a bullpen that I really like. Jason Adam was able to supply a sub-250 ERA last year. Jeremiah Estrada, who used to be with the Chicago Cubs, he's been able to do a nice job as well. And for the Cubs, they actually, in the second half of the season last year, had a top 8 bullpen ERA post-All-Star break, but you are currently dealing with Ryan Brazier being on the injured list. We have seen Eli Morgan, who I really liked with the Cleveland Guardians last year, be not so tremendous for the team thus far this season, so you do have a few rolls of the dice there. I do think, though, with the Padres, they should be a little bit of a lesser underdog here. At a plus 106 or higher, was willing to take a shot there, so do like the Padres on the money line. Like I said, at this current 7.5, I'd be taking a look at that total under as well. And what else we're taking a look at? Edge Boost, because they help bettors be able to access their funds 24/7, 365. There's no usage fees. There's no minimums. You're able to earn cashback rewards as you use Edge Boost as well. And when you go to edgeboost.bet, sign up today and utilize the promo code of CASH, C-A-S-H. Your first $25 deposit, that will be matched dollar for dollar by Edge Boost. That's over at edgeboost.bet, promo code of CASH. As it is cashing out with myself, Greg Peterson, on the VSiN family, and we've got ourselves a very nice slate that we've got on this MLB Sunday. And how about if we do dive in on this game as well? So we've got to give our namesake of the show a little bit of credit where it's due. David Peterson, no relation to myself, but interesting story. He actually does follow me on Twitter /X. So we follow each other. The Petersons must always stand together. And Mr. Peterson, he and the New York Mets, they're going to be playing us to the Toronto Blue Jays. As you've got Bowden Francis, who's going to be going for Toronto. This number is anywhere between about minus 125 to minus 130 with the Mets. The total is 7.5. I'd be willing to go up to a minus 120 128 with regards to the Mets. Once you get to minus 130 or so, that becomes a little bit of a point of no return, but still seeing some minus 128 out there, would be willing to dive in there. I do think that Bowden Francis is doing for a little bit of regression, and this is one of the games that did make my VSiN article for this Sunday, so we've got you guys all covered there. But when I take a look at this New York Mets team, I do think that they are going to be able to generate some offense in a Citi Field ballpark that is a little bit more pitcher friendly. But when you do pick up the guys that you do, like you pick up Juan Soto in the offseason, I think that that's going to be very rock solid for them, and I do think that you're going to be able to get a little bit more of Mark Vientos moving forward. He's been cold to start the season. He just has not been able to get on base to save his life. And for the Toronto Blue Jays, this is a little bit of a, shall we say, reborn offense. You've got a guy in Bo Bichette who last season was dealing with injury, and when he was out there on the field, wasn't too effective. Hitting north of 300 thus far this season. He's been able to do a nice job moving the line. They've been without Dalton Varsho. That has not affected them one bit. I actually really liked Will Wagner, one of the guys that they got at the trade deadline last season. I think that he was a part of that Yusei Kikuchi trade, so he's been able to give this team a nice spark. And even when he was out there last season, prior to his season-ending injury, he was very rock solid for them as well. So feeling relatively good there. And with having Bowden Francis out there, 2.88 ERA since the beginning part of the 2023 season, it's a bit deceiving though. With that 2.88 ERA, he's giving up 1.5 home runs per 9 innings, fielding independent of a 4.34. The regression monster is hungry, and I think that he's going to be sacking on some Bowden Francis sooner rather than later. And he's also hungry for some David Peterson as well, as our good friend Mr. Peterson, career low 2.90 ERA last season, but 3.44 fielding independent. He was able to do a nice job holding down the fort with him being able to keep the ball in the air, but we saw a massive dip in his strikeout numbers. Each of the previous 3 seasons, he had gotten at least 9.3 strikeouts per 9 innings, down to about 7.5 strikeouts per 9 innings last season. So I do have a little bit of question mark there. And with the Mets, they actually have really good long relievers. I like Max Kranick, Jose Buto. These are guys that are able to give you multiple innings, hold down the fort. Reed Garrett and some of the one-inning guys are guys I have my, shall we say, issues with. You had Edwin Diaz have a massive velocity dip during the springtime as well. And for the Toronto Blue Jays, this is not a trustworthy bullpen. Chad Green is a guy that I've always liked throughout his career, but I mean, when you're trusting in some of these guys like Yimi Garcia and company, that is a bullpen that you don't really want to have a lot of trust in. I do think that you're going to be able to get some nice run scoring here. I set my total a little bit north of an 8, so being able to get the 7.5, I do like the over in this ordeal, and with the Mets, would be willing to lay up to a minus 128 on that money line. This is probably going to be the marquee game of the day. You do have yourself the Dodgers on the road against the Philadelphia Phillies, and good pitching matchup here. This is going to be Tyler Glasnow going for the Dodgers, and Christopher Sanchez is on the bump for the Philadelphia Phillies. When I wrote this up, the Dodgers were more around about a minus 122 to a minus 125. This has ticked up to more around about a minus 130, minus 135. Total on this game is 7.5, but I'm still willing to take a shot on the LA Dodgers. I do think that there's still some great value with them, and if you're looking to get frisky with the Dodgers run line, now I personally did play the money line in this ordeal, but I do have this factoid for you here. As for the LA Dodgers, since the beginning of the 2022 season, they have won 318 regular season games. All but 55 of them have been by multiple runs. So if you're looking to lay a 1.5 with the LA Dodgers, needless to say, it's been working out very well for you. If you play out the percentages, that's only about 17.2% of games that are falling on 1 run. So that means that north of 81% of the time that they play these games and they win by multiple runs. So you're able to feel relatively good about that run line, especially when you got Mookie Betts hitting the way that he does. I mean, he was dealing with an illness for his beginning part of the season, and he has looked just fine ever since then. Shohei Ohtani continues to do Shohei Ohtani things. You've got Will Smith who's able to get jiggy with it, move the line, get on base. I do think that you've got a little bit of value here with the over. Recognize that Christopher Sanchez coming off of a nice year last year, and certainly Tyler Glasnow has been tremendous as well, but I do think that the Phillies going to pick up their offense a little bit. The Dodgers offense and their bats have been a little bit muted thus far in the series as well. Do think that both of these teams break out a little bit, and I do think that for the Dodgers, they get a little bit more out of Glasnow than the Phillies do out of Sanchez. So do like that money line of the Dodgers and the over, and we wrap things up taking a look at the title game from Monday, the Crown Invitational title, and so much more right here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Out here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is the final segment of the night right here on Cashing Out on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Coming up after myself, you're going to be getting a replay of this fine program. Meanwhile, if you're listening to the replay, you're going to be getting the VSiN Morning Line starting up at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, 7 o'clock a.m. Pacific Time. No shortage of things for Tim Murray and company to be able to recap here. My goodness, this has been an absolutely insane Saturday. We're going to be taking a look forward to the NCAA title game all day long here at the network. You'll be seeing few appearances from myself throughout the night. I know that I'm already booked for at least 2, and I am very much open for business here, so you'll be seeing quite a bit of myself throughout the day. We're going to have ourselves an amazing title game, and I'm going to be having my write-ups going up tomorrow as well, so very much hard at work here, and hopefully, for my own sake, we can get the third title winner in the last 6 years since being here at the network. So we're going to be looking to do that. I'll be breaking down the NCAA title game, but also do have to get you guys some sweats in terms of what we're seeing on the baseball front on this Monday, as well as the lone thing about the title game is that it's not being played tomorrow, and we need to make you guys some money on this Sunday as well. And we do have a college basketball game on Sunday. Probably not going to be quite the betting handle that you're going to be seeing in terms of the Florida versus Houston game, mainly because not all of you are able to bet it, unfortunately. But that said, we've got Central Florida versus Nebraska. Right now with Nebraska, they are a 3.5-point favorite. Total on this game is 158 to 158.5, and I'll be a little bit more brief here because I know that there are some of you out there that aren't able to get down on this game. But that said, I'm willing to lay the 3.5 with Nebraska. Wouldn't want to go past the 3.5, but I do think that Central Florida going to be a little bit tuckered out after what we saw here today. They actually had their game linger into the Final Four game between Auburn versus Florida as they scored 104 points against Villanova. They played very much up and down, and this is a Central Florida team that, at their core, they are very much looking to play up-tempo. Number 1 in the country in total possessions per game away from home. Even more possessions per game than Alabama. Problem is they're not necessarily the most efficient team, and now they're without Keyshawn Hall, their top scorer from the regular season. I do think that for Central Florida, they're going to be looking to try to be able to have as much pace as possible, but you have to think because they don't have a day off. This is a back-to-back sort of spot. They played overtime yesterday, that these guys are going to be a little bit tired, are going to be a little bit winded, and for this Nebraska team, they really didn't have any opt-outs for this tournament. They were really the lone team. They and Boise State that really bought into this tournament, in my opinion. You've got Bryce Williams, who's able to give you 20-plus points per contest. He only had 14 in the win against Boise State, but he still was able to do enough to be able to get the job done for them. You still have a few guys like a Berkey Buchiesel, who's able to give the team 5-plus rebounds per game. And Nebraska, not the world's greatest rebounding team, about 188th in the country in terms of rebound percentage, but this is a Central Florida team that, in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound for opponents, they are allowing 32.1% of opponents' missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. That is outside the top 330 in all of college basketball. That's going to be an issue, even with Mustafa Thiam, who is a true 7-footer, who's able to give you multiple blocks per contest down low for Central Florida. I think that they're going to be up against it. Again, I do think that because Central Florida is going to be a little bit worn out from having to play an overtime game against Villanova today, that is going to help you out just as coach with the under. And I always find this with these non-NCAA tournament games, the deeper you get into the tournament, the more guys actually care about playing defense. Like, we have not seen much defense in the Crown Invitational. I wish I could put it any other way, but the defense has been very optional, to say the least. We saw a little bit more in that Nebraska versus Boise State game. I think now that you're getting to a title game, you've actually got hard-earned cash on the line for these teams as well, because the winner of this is going to be able to get money for their NIL funds. I think that when you put money on the line, teams are going to decide, you know what, let's actually decide to play a little bit of defense here. So I'm going to be in on the under, and here at 3.5, I'm willing to lay it with Nebraska. And all of our best bets here today, it is brought to you by our good friends over at G-Bank. G-Bank, they are the official bank of VSiN, and they are really upping the ante for you. As if you're a new customer with them, if you sign up for the new G-Bank Signature Visa card, you can get up to $750 in bonuses. First, new customers who spend $1,000 on eligible purchases within the first 90 days, they are able to receive a $250 bonus. And then for a $500 bonus, if you spend $50,000 on gaming and sports app loads within the first 30 days, you're able to unlock that as well. That gives you the potential of a $750 bonus. Apply now over at vsin.com/gbank. That is vsin.com/gbank. This is subject to credit approval, and terms and conditions, they do apply. How about if we dive in first things first on something that I have been buzzing about the last hour and a half? thought that I was going to be handicapping Duke versus Florida, but instead we are handicapping Houston versus Florida. Right now with Florida, in most spots they are a 1-point favorite. This opened up in a few places as a 1.5, and very briefly at DraftKings, Houston became the 1-point favorite, but right now we're seeing this pretty much one across the board. We're starting to see this total dive. Most places open this up at a 142. We're starting to see a few 141.5s pop onto the board. I'm even seeing at Caesars a 141. As long as we can get a 141.5 or less, I'm going to be willing to dive in on the over. We have seen it with Houston. They have gotten to at least 69 points in all but one of their NCAA tournament games. Even though this is a very slow, very controlled team, Houston, outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game, they shoot the snot out of the ball. As this team, they entered into this Final Four, number 2 in all of college basketball in terms of three-point shooting percentage, and they shot it really well in this venue. And I know that there are reports of this. The three-man weave is someone that I follow very well. Those guys, Jim, Kai, and Matt, they do a tremendous job. They were talking about this. Rims are very soft out there at the Alamo Dome, and that means a little bit of something, because when you get into these neutral court venues, sometimes the rims, they are very, very unkind, and you saw some pretty friendly bounces out there in the Final Four games. I do think that there's a little bit of something to that. Additionally, this is a Florida team that they do like to gun it. They are a top 75 team in terms of total possessions per game, and these are two very efficient offenses. Top 10 teams in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and I keep going back to this as well. If you get yourself a nip and tuck spot, if Florida's down 6 points with a minute remaining, if Houston's down 6 points with a minute remaining, you're going to get the fouls out. Those were some serious stones from Kelvin Sampson at the end of that game against Duke, because with about a minute and 15 seconds remaining, he decided to not foul. Duke misses a shot. They're able to get the bucket on the flip side. That meant that they did not have to foul whatsoever. If they find themselves in a similar circumstance, though, they might be a little bit more willing to foul, in my opinion. And I think the bigger reason why Kelvin Sampson did not decide to foul, which he was correct in doing so. That was a master class in coaching that we saw in Kelvin Sampson and what we saw there. Because I know that there have been quite a few people have come at me being like, oh, Kelvin Sampson has not won the big game or anything like that, which I have received on my Twitter/X feed a lot of apologies for that here in the last few hours because of what we just saw, and rightfully so. And you don't have to apologize to me. Apologize to Kelvin Sampson, who's one of the best tacticians that we have seen in this game in a very, very long time. That man knows more college basketball than I could ever hope to, but man, the way that he was able to put together that final sequence was just an absolute work of art. I can't think highly enough about it. It's just so incredible what we did see. That said, Todd Golden, he is very good at being able to utilize the X's and O's to be able to up scoring as well. I still remember there was an article that was put out in 2020 by Rob Dowster. He at the time was with NBC Sports. Now he does a tremendous job over at the Field of 68, talking about why Todd Golden was fouling when he was up 12 points at the end of the first half. This was back when he was a coach with the Dons of San Francisco, and he was pretty much playing the numbers game, trying to be able to get his team another possession. That's how forward-thinking he is. I've had a lot of people come at me being like, wow, these coaches have absolutely no idea whatsoever what they're doing with the final possession of the first half, and you're not wrong when you say that. Todd Golden, he's thinking about those sorts of things. So I think that we're going to have two coaches that they really know how to be able to maximize their offenses. They're looking to be able to maximize scoring, and that's a little bit of the reason why I do like the over. Again, these are two teams that they know how to be able to lengthen out a game when they need to do so as well. And I do think that in the end, just with Florida, the overall size that you've got, Micah Hanlogden burning his red shirt, being able to be available for this team because they are going to need him down low. You've got Joseph Tugler, Joanne Roberts on the flip side for Houston. Those are grown, stinking men right there. That is going to be difficult to be able to match up with, but I think that Florida is going to be able to answer the call there. And Alex Condon, just 1 point in that game against Auburn. You know that he's going to be able to bounce back. He's got good versatility. Thomas Hall, that sixth man, he's able to bury threes. He's able to give you good rebounding. And Walter Clayton along with LJ Cryer, these are two really good scorers. I like Walter Clayton a little bit more in a pressure spot. I just don't know if Cryer is going to be able to duplicate the 6 main threes that he had here tonight against Duke. I do like Florida in this spot. Set them as a 2-point favorite, so I'm going to lay that one. And again, at a 141.5 or less, I'm going to be in on the over as well. And then if you're looking a little bit more on the baseball front, certainly a little bit more brief with the baseball tonight. But I'm right now seeing the Astros in a relative pick'em game against the Minnesota Twins. This is a game that I have not hit upon too much tonight, but going to be willing to take a shot on the money line. Chris Paddock just did not look good in his first start. And the Twins right now dealing with guys like Royce Lewis and company being on the injured list. So that's a little bit of a less than savory situation. Being able to get plus money on the Astros. Going to be willing to ride with that money line. And I do think that it's interesting that we've got a total of 9 in the Guardians versus Angels game. That's one that I'm willing to take a shot on the under on as well. And something else that you want to take a shot on, the VSiN lineup for this Sunday. It's locked and loaded. Starts with the weekend morning line at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, 7 o'clock a.m. Pacific Time. Tim Murray and company, they do a great job. Ready, set, bet. Always a tremendous show. And then we're going to take you up to the national title game. We're going to take you up to everything that we're going to be seeing on Sunday. We've got full round-the-clock coverage of all these great sports activities that's happening on the Sunday and into Monday with the title game right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.